Hello, my name's Niranjan, the host of Master of Your Crafts podcast, learning from leaders who are continuously inspired, passionate, and driven to align with their soul purpose, sharing their gifts to bring healing to others. The music is composed by Rebecca Everett. Today is episode number 32, and I'll be talking to Medgar Parrish, who graduated from New Mexico State University in journalism with an emphasis in secondary education. He then went on to work for the city of Los Angeles for 20 years. Medgar is ready to transition towards a journey to discover the deeper meaning of life and how to engage and enhance ordinary, everyday experiences as a gift from God. So hello and welcome to Medgar. How are you today?
I am excellent. I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I am excited for our call to know a little bit more about you because I met you on Clubhouse and we'd had some pretty interesting conversations in that room. And it intrigued me to learn more about you. So I would like for you to share, what is it do you believe about yourself? And do you feel it defines who you are?
I believe I am an evolving energy or spirit. I feel that my life has been always changing. And when you heard me speak, I was in the midst of kind of defining that change amongst people I had never met before. And even the Clubhouse platform is new to me. And I believe that it's a new opportunity to learn from new people that I meet, just like I'm meeting you.
That's right. It is. It's such a great platform. Becoming quite an advocate for it. I think it's a great opportunity to meet lots of different people around the world in different places and spaces.
Oh my God, yes.
Things that are often very easily overlooked because I'm sure there's some equation out there of the percentage of information that we take in with the eyes versus through the ears when we can see. But whereas when you omit one of them, the other senses get heightened. And even just through that process, it's a big indicator of how much more and how acutely we listen to when we don't have the visual appeal as we do in most places and most aspects.
Exactly. And one of the things that I have learned, I began down this rabbit hole of searching religious concepts that I have been brought up to learn through Christianity. And given the internet, tend to go from one thing to another, just leads you into these videos that take you deeper into this rabbit hole. And I found myself watching videos on quantum mechanics and physics and stuff like that. And given that I had an experience with Christianity, I basically connected the dots of, I said, hey, this guy, Jesus, is a physicist. When he's talking about, I am the light of the world. And I started, learning about the double slit experiment and, how light works and how it's zero mass and how humble Jesus was. And I was like, he's like this light that has zero mass, but illuminates everything. Right. And so just lets you know that it's important to when you look at the word matter, what really matters is not necessarily that your voice is prominent, but your ears, and that you're gifted with two ears and one mouth. And so I have to make sure I'm quick to listen versus speak what I think, I know. And so a lot of times if you hear me speaking in the rooms, I'm kind of listening and, giving a different perspective of what I've learned and just sharing. And hopefully we all can build on this conversation wherever it may go.
Absolutely. But isn't that truly the magic of, I guess, really to a certain degree, the internet that's given us this opportunity to connect with people on different topics? And like you said, to delve into an area that has been installed in us from childhood or even before that,
Oh, my.
that shows us up time and time again, and learn different perspectives and objectives, and I want to say opinions of others too, because they're all pretty much opinions, right?
Oh, definitely. I mean, we are unlearning our biases through communication. The more we meet one another, the more we realize we're the same and we go through the same problems and the same, we have the same families and the
Yeah.
same issues. And
Yeah.
I think, it's that division that has been installed in this matrix that we live where that's being broken down, and as people can come together and speak and see visually and through our senses and realize, well, wait a minute, you know,
Mhm.
I have an uncle like that, and that's how I equate it to the religious concept. It's like giving a testimony. When you
Right.
hear others' testimony and when you're listening to what others have to say,
Mhm.
then you can say, hey, wow, I have a similar experience. And
Yeah.
that's healing. And, a lot of times we have to go through some type of adversity to hit that low that humbles you.
Yeah.
It's kind of like as a child, when you mentioned from our parents,
Mhm.
it's like listening to a song as a child, a love song as a child. And you may have listened to this particular song hundreds of times, but
Mhm.
then it's not until you have a broken heart that that song has meaning.
Mhm.
And you can take that and parallel with, and I always use Christianity. Not that Christianity is the end all be all, but
Mhm.
it's what I was brought up and exposed to. But if you understand the story where, in order for Christ to show his love, he had to die this,
Mhm.
death. And in that crucifixion of him dying in the name of love,
Yeah.
it's kind of like what we deal with, using the analogy of the music. It's like you hear the love song and it's words don't mean a thing until you've gone through it.
That's right. That's right. Then it just becomes word. It's word, yes, it's matter, but it doesn't matter to you until you can actually embody the emotion of it.
Exactly. And that emotion that I feel is connected to that energy source
Yeah.
that's in us. So when we look at, from a scientific standpoint, that, I use the periodic table.
Mhm.
So we know we've all, saw that little chart that was in our classrooms when we were in elementary school, and we had to
Mhm.
learn the elements of
Yeah.
the periodic table. And there's one thing that's not on the periodic table that I've
Mhm.
discovered over the past, 10 years in delving, digging deep into this rabbit hole, is that photons of light are not
Mhm.
identified on the periodic table. And therefore, nothing on the periodic table comes into being or matters. Nothing on the periodic table literally matters without light illuminating it. And,
Mhm.
it goes back to, from the beginning, all these elements came into play, working together to create the earth the trees, and we've taken the trees and created lumber and built houses and built cars out of everything that's identifiable on the periodic table. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and then we've, what we feel is an advanced mode of communication, we've created languages.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's this vibration, or when you realize that all energy in its purest form comes from the sun.
Right.
And in that, I equate with Christianity again, where Jesus never referred to himself as the Son of God,
Mm-hmm.
the Son of Man. So
Mm-hmm.
I kind of make this leap like Son, S-O-N or S-U-N,
Yes.
and then having studied some Egyptian text where the sun god Amun, we
Mm-hmm.
say in our prayer, we say Amen, but
Mm-hmm.
we're paying homage to the sun god Amun, Amun Ra,
Right.
Amun Re, and so all energy and all vibrations come from the sun.
Yeah.
And then you think about the story of the tree of life, and I look at the spiritual battle, I call it, where
Mm-hmm.
the sun gives life to the trees, and the trees give life to us. And
Mm-hmm.
through photosynthesis, when we're sleeping, it's like our energy, when we wake up, we're connected to the sun. And when the sun goes down, we lose that energy, that
Mm-hmm.
connection, and we
Mm-hmm.
go to sleep.
Right.
And then when the sun is resurrected in the morning,
Yeah.
we rise. And that connection is reestablished, and we're energetic. So when you think of the Son of God, or there's a scripture that says foxes have holes and birds have trees or whatever, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. So the sun is always providing daytime somewhere and light
Mm-hmm.
everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that energy I equate to, at its core, even the voice or the vibrations coming from my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So in the text in the scripture, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God.
Yeah.
And so we must seek knowledge and increase our vocabulary.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And it's kind of like I say, we're all books.
Mm-hmm.
And some of us are comic books, and
Mm-hmm.
some of us are legal dictionaries. And some of us haven't begun writing our books, and we're incomplete. And, when we interact with one another, we must figure out, okay, here's my book. And, it's when we come across each other and one of us is a comic book and the other is a Black's Law dictionary that our words mean different things. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. But it all comes down to another element of language, which is the language of the emotions and the physical body. Because I truly feel that when we tap into a space of the heart, and when we feel something vibrate in our body, feel the sensations, feel on a cellular level, something else is happening. And when we feel it, there's no denying it. But yet, when it comes to the mind, there is an element where we can disagree or dismiss it or think it through a different perspective or think out of that perspective. But the physical body, you can't deny that emotion.
right, exactly. And that's the power of love. That's the power of love. I used to hear my grandmother as a child speak to my uncles and aunts. She would say, love is what love does.
Mm-hmm.
It's that element of, performing And once you see what an individual is doing, that emotional connection and realization that what is true through the interaction, the physical interaction that's divined by the light within us, that's enabled us and demonstrated the commitment that we have. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's still a frequency because, as we've talked about earlier, everything is matter. It's still an element of a frequency that you can feel within your own body, but others can feel, which is what I'm also gathering from your conversation with your grandmother, that they can feel that matter of love. You can sense it outside of your own beingness on a whole
Yes.
deeper level.
Yes. I mean, my mother passed away back in 2014. And
Mm.
one of the strangest emotions I've ever felt or encountered, because I know how much my mother loved me, and then I can feel how much she still loves me. So
Mm.
whatever this energy is that I've never exposed, it's like I hear this communication, you know,
Mhm.
and I don't know if it's through clarity from words she's instilled in me, or
Mhm.
if she's like guiding me through some mysterious way, right? And so I recall the evening my mother passed away, I was so distraught. And I remember driving home and I sat in the car and I opened the door, and I was just sitting there with my leg out the door, and I just felt something. And I looked up and there was like a full moon,
Mm.
just this full white moon. And I kind of felt like that was like a sign from her for some reason. And
Mhm.
now, ever since then, it's like as I've kind of had issues here or there, I
Yeah.
look up and there's like a moon. And I'm like, okay, 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 I'm going crazy. Right. So for me, it's like I have these moments of miracles, whether it be a check show up in the mail, or
Mhm.
uh, uh, just like a thought that's just some, you know, thought that comes to me, and
Yeah.
realization. And I'm like, okay, where is that coming from? You know,
Powerful.
yes.
Powerful. It comes from some place that I truly believe that we can't fathom with this conscious mind that we have, which is why I think the power of emotions is so powerful and so overlooked sometimes too. But I think there are more nuggets of wisdom that we can gain through the emotional body.
Agree. I agree. I've worked for the city of Los Angeles for 20 years.
Mm.
Just the power of thought. There was a time I started off as a traffic officer back in 2000. And all of a sudden I was a videographer in
Mhm.
office and the whole bit. And I worked in this capacity, for like, years, like 8 or almost 10 years really. And during this time, I've gone through a divorce, just, a lot of traumatic emotional loss, millions of dollars of property. And then I was brought to the still place of not having a job, like kind of pulled out of that matrix of going to work every day.
Mhm.
And now I wake up and I just wonder what day of the week it is. And I say, God created Clubhouse for me to have people to speak with. He
Right?
created this pandemic to slow the world down and
Yeah.
stop everything. And now I'm meeting incredible, beautiful people like yourself. And here I am talking. We've never met, and I'm on Clubhouse.
Yeah.
And God says this, the only thing I need to do is focus on me
Mm.
and Him, but focusing on God, I discovered that God is me, or God is everything. I read this. There's a scripture in the Bible in Exodus chapter 3, verses 13 and 14. And in this scripture, I'm paraphrasing, but Moses has freed the Israelites from the Pharaoh's rule, and he's got the 10 commandments from God, and he turns back to God and he says, well, who shall I say you are? And God says, I am who I am.
Yeah.
This is what you say to the Israelites. I am has sent you. And that last sentence threw me, right? I was like, I am has sent unto you. So I was like, okay, so God referred to himself as I am. But then it hit me that reason why God said he is I am, because the most powerful force in my life is God. And God says, I am. So when you ask someone who's the most powerful force in your life, you should say, I am. And because we are a part and connected to this energy, and to know it is to be at peace with one. And so here I am today without the worries of getting up, going to work, basically just going for walks and trying to drink enough water every day and eat healthy and share knowledge, words. And I think that's what we're all called to do, is to teach one another, like what you're doing. You are providing a platform that's quadrupling, just enhancing your knowledge, because you for some reason heard my words and decided to ask me. That's how you are using your platform to share just the energy from, you're going to be sharing energy from people that you haven't even met yet.
Absolutely.
That I think that's what we ultimately are called to do, and that's going to break down the negativity in the world and the ignorance in the world. Because once people become enlightened, I think we'll be all right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to come back to that piece in a minute, but I want to ask you, what do you feel with this whole search and quest that you've been on of your own life, going through life, as I call it, the ups and the downs and everything that it shows us in between that we're here to learn and experience? Out of all of that, what do you feel is your calling?
My calling now is to share what I've been through, provide a testimony that may be equal to others, that can bring them through whatever it is they're going through. Specifically, I've spent most of my life as an athlete, as a football player. And so I relate very well to young men who have this fantasy of becoming a pro football player, and something that is a small portion of life, even if you make it to the pros. The average pro lifespan, a pro player is in the league for 3 to 4 years. That's like a blink of an eye when you think about our lives.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so specifically, I tend to speak to athletes and young men who have these, what I would define as goals that are fixated in this matrix. So I think it's just, for me specifically, dealing with young people, that people that have been associated with athletics. That's something I've experienced very well. And there's a lot of people on social media who are my friends or classmates who, I remember at one time in high school, I was voted most athletic. So I was like this, I was a guy that was dressing up in shorts and always had a football in his hand, so.
Right. So with that element of calling of who it is you want to support, a guide through this journey, what do you feel are some of the attributes that you have garnered and cultivated to match and marry that purpose, if you will, of the gifts that you have?
I would say perseverance. Perseverance. Some of the obstacles in my life that I've had to overcome, I've been fortunate enough to seek psychiatric treatment through this workers' comp case, and where they had me sit in front of these therapists.
Okay.
And they asked a similar question, right? And when I was able to speak to them about my spiritual foundation and how I understand how light works, and how light never slows down for anything. It always stays at the speed of light. So in speaking in terms of help that one gets during psychiatric treatment, and I was able to show the similarities or the parallels to the laws of nature and being aligned with nature, almost to the point where they wanted to hear me talk more, right? And so there's this thing I learned about called gauge symmetry, and it's some study in science or what have you, but it's like this. You know, we know everything is energy, or there's this symmetry of nature. And I think what we have to do is we have to align our energy and our words parallel or congruent to nature. So an example would be, we as humans, we change vibrations or our words to mean whatever they want. So specifically, if for, as we do, if for some reason we decided to say up was down, and we redefine down as up, well, nature doesn't care, right? And you can say nature is God, right? So let's say nature doesn't care what you identify, because if you reclassify up as down and down as up, and you go to the 10th floor of a building and jump up just because you call it up, the results when you hit the ground will be the same. So nature is going to be what it's going to be. So we as humans, as individuals, have to be certain that our vibrations and our words and our knowledge parallels and doesn't deviate from what nature calls us to be. And, that's kind of, how I try to assess things and try to think and keep a moral standard. And where you stay in your lane is I try to make sure I'm listening first, and try to find and identify the rules at play at any specific time, and make sure those rules align with my moral compass.
Right. It's quite a game, isn't it?
Oh, very complex, very complex. When you think about, especially for me, it's easy because it's just me, but when you have children and a significant other, and you're trying to, it's like you have the plates and you're trying to keep everything going. When you look at Clubhouse, you look at all these relationship rooms, and they're just going around in circles because everyone's speaking words that mean different things to each other.
To them, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Which brings me to the thought of, I think it's been a consistent pattern through this conversation, is the translations of words that we use are limited to our own mind. So the perspective that I have about nature is limiting versus based on my perception, based on my knowledge and wisdom. Whereas for you, it's going to be a very different interpretation. Which brings me to the point of, you mentioned earlier of a word of enlightenment, of how people are going through life to get to that space. Knowledge is a representation of enlightenment. Recognizing the difference between religion and spirituality, and how maybe the world of energy has really ramped up in the last couple of years. Do you feel, or do you think the resonance to the word enlightenment still has its, I want to say, mystery, or it has its magic? Is it still there, or has it been lost because of overuse, or is it relevant to people that they can use that word? Is it a scary word for some people?
It is. And to be enlightened, it's like wisdom. As we think we know, wisdom is knowing that we know nothing. And so to be enlightened is moving to a place where something was revealed to you new. And that in itself is understanding that we don't know anything. That scares people, right? And you know, especially people that think they know everything.
Yeah.
Right. So the person that thinks they know everything, the person that knows they know nothing can identify a fool.
Yeah.
And when you see people who think they know everything operating at the highest levels of government, or that may even be supervising you. And in my situation, I think about all the late nights in college that I had to endure studying when I was just, oh my God, how am I going to get through this? And all the workload, the assignments, the papers I had to write. And I mean, for me, going through college was this most intense thing, especially playing football, right? So we would be flying to games and I'd still have the same homework as everyone else. And then I come to a point in my life where I've endured all of this. And then I have a supervisor who has never gone to college, and they're making twice as much money. So that enlightenment is like, wow, you know, and that's when you have to humble yourself. And that's where things that we are revealed to us, we have to realize we know nothing, and we can't we can't react to certain things in the world that operate in an opposite thought pattern. And there's a saying that Jesus said, is like, I think the disciples asked him, how do we enter the kingdom of heaven? Jesus pulled a child over and says, unless you become like a child, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. And when I think about a child, they're always asking why. Yep. But why? You tell them because of, but why, right?
Yes.
And we have to be humble like a child, and just because a little child, when they can't get what they want, but why, right? So when I was looking at this, supervisor vacant, I'm like, but why? But then I have to learn and realize that one thing, it's not about money. I mean, I've lived in my dream house. I've purchased my dream car. I was blessed to have experienced those things. And yet here I am in my little apartment with my red wall,
Mm-hmm.
without the worries of a job, and I haven't missed a meal. And so I sit here and I can talk to wonderful people and celebrate the day.
It's beautiful. And you're right in terms of the intentions, the perspectives that we all live by is through our own experiences.
Yeah, those are unique experiences with our family, our friends. I mean, I am of the age where I remember when there was just the television at home and you couldn't, once you left outside the door, you were disconnected from everybody except for your
Right.
immediate surroundings. And, you had everybody's phone number memorized in your head. And now, today, if you leave out the house without your cell phone, you feel like you're naked,
That's
and
right.
so we've evolved, and I can't even imagine. I wish I could see what 50 years, 100 years is going to look like.
Yeah.
But then again, first or second law of thermodynamics says that energy never dies, it just changes form. So we may just be, or I may be in this different form that's even better than I can even think of.
That's right.
So
That's the power of energy. That's the power of thoughts and feelings. And also action, right? So
right.
if we don't put all these amazing ideas and desires or goals that we want to achieve into action, we can't embody them, which then takes us to that place that you talked about of the expansion of knowledge, the expansion of energy and vibrational frequency. So yes, we've fast forwarded by coming to the age of technology and having internet connected into our back pocket every second of the moment. But we've also come to the age where the vibrational frequency of what we are as mattered beings, vessels in this physical suit of body, are also vibrating. So our frequency and our own antennas, if you will, are vibrating perhaps a higher speed and frequency than we can actually fathom with our conscious mind, right?
Wow, well said. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Man, that's it. That's it. Yeah,
So I'm excited for that moment for everybody to get on that train, because that's truly the one that's going to bring us back to source and really embody that I am statement.
exactly, because I am is the same as I am for you.
Absolutely.
And that's what we have to get to. That we all are one.
Yeah.
We are one.
Yeah.
And we're getting there. We're getting there.
are. Medgar, this has been such a pleasure and such an honor to share this time and space with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Naranjan, and you've been listening to Master of Your Crafts podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and join me next week for another episode. Thank you for listening.